The reception hall was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the occasional sound of someone's bad attempt at a wedding speech. I sat at the head table, exhaustion settling into my bones. But there was pride too. Pride in my daughter, pride in the fact that after 5 years of working myself into the ground, she had the wedding of her dreams. 5 years, 2 jobs, barely any sleep, all for this. I had missed weekends, birthdays, even anniversaries, but it was worth it. That's what I told myself. The father-daughter dance had been the highlight of my night. When Emily hugged me afterward, eyes shining, I thought, this is what it's all about. This was why I did it. I ignored the way my wife, Lisa, barely met my eyes anymore, how she'd been acting strange for months. There were things I could ask about later. Tonight was about Emily. And then Mark had to open his damn mouth. Mark, Lisa's cousin. The kind of guy who thought he was funny when really he was just an insufferable jackass. He stood, slightly swaying, raising his glass with a cocky grin. I wasn't paying much attention at first. Another generic toast, more fake sentimentality. But then he said it. You know, Em, I remember when you were born, Mark chuckled. Man, your mom and I had some wild times back then. I swear, if things had gone differently, I might be the one walking you down the aisle today. Laughter. A few awkward chuckles. Someone clinked their glass, trying to move things along. But my body stopped functioning for a full 5 seconds. My brain tried to process the words to shove them into some context that made sense. Mark was drunk. He was joking. Right? I turned to Lisa. She wasn't laughing. Her face had gone stiff, her fingers gripping the tablecloth so hard her knuckles turned white. She was staring at Mark, at the crowd, everywhere but at me. And I knew. I knew before I could stop myself, before my brain could tell me I was being crazy. I looked at Emily, my beautiful daughter, the girl I had raised, sacrificed everything for, the girl who didn't look a damn thing like me. Mark, though, same eyes, same smile, same damn dimple on his left cheek. The room felt too hot. My skin prickled. I turned to Lisa again, and this time, she must have felt my stare like a knife at her throat because her eyes finally met mine. I saw it then, the silent plea, the warning. Don't do this here. I stood up so fast my chair screeched against the floor. The guests turned. The DJ, who had been queuing up another song, hesitated. I could hear someone murmuring, feel Emily's concerned gaze on me. But I wasn't looking at her. Lisa's hand darted out, gripping my wrist. Not now, she whispered. Command. An order. Not an apology. I yanked my hand away. Mark had the audacity to still be grinning, looking around as if confused by the tension. I walked away, not because I was backing down, not because I was letting this go, but because if I stayed, I was going to destroy my daughter's wedding. And Lisa wasn't getting off that easy. I left the reception hall without looking back, my pulse hammering in my ears. The sound of laughter and music grew distant as I stepped into the cool night air. My hands were shaking. No, my entire body was shaking. I braced myself against the nearest pillar, forcing deep breaths into my lungs. Mark's words replayed in my head, over and over, like a broken record. If things had gone differently, I might be the one walking you down the aisle today. It wasn't just a drunk man rambling. It wasn't some offhand joke. It was a confession, whether he realized it or not. I had spent 5 years killing myself with 2 jobs to pay for my daughter's wedding. My daughter. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the cold stone pillar until my fingers ached. Don't do this here. Lisa's voice, her desperate whisper. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. A wave of nausea rolled through me. My stomach clenched, my hands turning clammy. I had to get out of here. The door swung open behind me. Footsteps. Lisa. Of course, it was Lisa. She didn't speak right away, just stood there, the scent of her expensive perfume invading my space. For a brief, insane moment, I thought about all the times I had come home late, exhausted, only to have that same scent greet me when she kissed my cheek. The way she used to rub my shoulders and tell me I was working too hard. The way she'd say she was proud of me. All of it, every single memory, felt tainted now. Go back inside, I said, my voice like gravel. We're not doing this here, Lisa replied, her tone sharp, controlled. She was still in damage control mode, still thinking she could fix this. This is Emily's wedding. You're not ruining it. I turned to face her. I wanted to see it in her eyes, the truth, the guilt, the regret. I wanted to see her fall apart. But she didn't. Lisa wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't even ashamed. She just looked irritated. You knew, I said. The words barely made it past my clenched teeth. You knew what he meant, and you didn't deny it. Lisa exhaled, tilting her head back as if she were dealing with a difficult child. Can we talk about this later? I laughed. I actually laughed. A bitter, humorless sound that made her flinch. Later, I repeated. Are you serious? Lisa folded her arms. Yes, later. When you're thinking rationally. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Tell me, right now, is Emily mine? Her jaw tightened. You raised her. Wrong answer. I stared at her, disbelief and fury colliding inside me. That's not what I asked. Lisa's gaze darted toward the entrance, where voices and music still spilled out. Not now, she hissed. That was all I needed to hear. I turned on my heel and walked away, ignoring the sound of Lisa calling my name. She didn't chase after me. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe she thought I'd cool off, that I'd come back inside and pretend everything was fine for the sake of appearances. She didn't realize this wasn't something I could cool off from. This was war. I drove without thinking, the city lights blurring past as my mind raced. I had no destination, just the overwhelming need to move to get as far away from that reception hall as possible. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached, but I barely felt it. Lisa's voice still echoed in my head. You raised her. Not yes. Not of course she's yours. Just that cold, calculated dodge. I punched the dashboard so hard the pain shot up my arm, but it was nothing compared to the fire raging inside me. 5 years of grinding myself into the ground for that wedding. 2 jobs. Missed birthdays. Missed everything. And all of it, every single ounce of sacrifice, was based on a lie. I needed proof. A DNA test. My vision sharpened as my next steps crystallized in my mind. I wasn't going to confront Lisa again until I had undeniable, irrefutable truth in my hands. If I was wrong, if by some miracle this was just a misunderstanding, then I'd deal with it. But if I was right, Lisa had no idea what was coming. I pulled into a pharmacy, barely remembering the drive. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, too bright, too normal for what I was about to do. The cashier barely looked up as I grabbed the DNA test kit from the shelf. Checkout, I hesitated. I couldn't just ask Emily for a DNA sample out of nowhere. That would raise too many questions. But I already knew how I'd get it. I still had the suit I'd worn at the wedding, the one Emily had hugged me in. A strand of hair, a piece of fabric. Something had to be on it. I paid in cash, not trusting myself to leave a paper trail. Back in my car, I sat in silence, gripping the small box in my lap. I could feel the weight of it heavier than it should have been. This wasn't just a test. This was the end of my old life and the beginning of something else. Something dark. Something Lisa wasn't prepared for. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My body was exhausted, but my mind had been running all night, replaying Mark's words, Lisa's reaction, and the weight of that DNA test sitting in my drawer like a ticking time bomb. I didn't go back home after leaving the wedding. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel, staring at the ceiling for hours, the unopened test kit on the nightstand beside me. I kept thinking about Emily, about the way she had hugged me at the wedding, her voice filled with love when she said, "Thank you for everything, Dad." Dad! The word made my stomach turn. Had I been living a lie for 24 years? I had to know. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, I grabbed the suit jacket I had worn to the wedding, searching the fabric with an almost manic desperation. It didn't take long. There, clinging to the shoulder where Emily had rested her head, was a single strand of golden brown hair. I didn't let myself hesitate. I followed the instructions on the DNA kit with robotic precision, sealing the sample before I could think too much about it. Now, all that was left to do was send it. The drive to the testing facility felt surreal. The world outside looked the same, people walking their dogs, kids playing in front yards, cars stopping at red lights, but mine had been flipped upside down. When I walked inside, the receptionist barely spared me a glance. "Drop off?" she asked, barely looking up. I nodded, sliding the package across the counter. She stamped it, entered something into the system, and then looked at me properly for the first time. "Results will be emailed in 3 to 5 business days," she said. "Have a nice day." "A nice day." I walked out without responding, the weight in my chest growing heavier. 3 to 5 days. That was all it would take to confirm if my entire life had been a joke. The wait for the results felt like slow, drawn-out torture. 3 to 5 business days, an eternity when your entire reality hangs in the balance. Every hour felt like a year. Every interaction felt hollow. I avoided home. I couldn't look at Lisa without feeling the overwhelming urge to demand answers. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction, not until I had proof. Instead, I buried myself in work, clocking in extra hours at my job, keeping my phone close like it held the answer to my existence. On the 3rd day, my inbox dinged. I was at work, sitting at my desk, drowning in meaningless spreadsheets when I saw the email. My body went rigid. My hands felt numb as I reached for my phone. It was from the lab. "Your DNA test results are now available." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. This was it. The truth wrapped up in a neat little report. I stepped out of the office and into the nearest empty conference room, locking the door behind me. My heart pounded in my ears as I opened the email. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words blurred. My vision tunneled. 0, 0, 0. A choked sound left my throat, something between a laugh and a sob. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped my phone. 24 years. 24 years of raising her. Loving her. Breaking my body to give her the best life possible. And she wasn't mine. Something inside me cracked. I wasn't her father. I was a paycheck. A convenient idiot. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table for support. My mind screamed at me to do something, call Lisa, demand the truth, confront her, but no. That wasn't enough. Lisa had lied to me for over 2 decades. She had let me believe Emily was mine while I worked myself into the ground for her. And Mark? That smug bastard had known. I wiped a hand over my face, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. Lisa had spent 24 years lying to me. I was about to spend the rest of my life making sure she regretted every single second of it. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. If I saw Lisa, if I heard her voice, I wasn't sure I could hold back. And I wasn't going to explode on her, not yet. No, she didn't deserve the luxury of an emotional outburst. She deserved something far worse. I sat in my car for hours, staring at the DNA test results on my phone, reading the same damn sentence over and over again. Probability of paternity, 0%. A normal man would have lost his mind. Screamed. Cried. Thrown things. But I wasn't going to do that. Lisa had played me for 24 years, and I was going to take my time dismantling the world she had built. By the time I finally drove home, my plan had already started forming. Lisa was in the kitchen when I walked in, drinking a glass of wine like nothing had happened. Like she wasn't the worst kind of person. She looked up, raising an eyebrow. "Decided to come home, did you?" That tone. That dismissive, unimpressed tone. I wanted to laugh. She had no idea. I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and twisted the cap off, taking a slow sip before answering. "Yeah. Had a lot on my mind." Lisa sighed dramatically, swirling her wine in her glass. "Are we still sulking over the wedding? God, you're exhausting." Exhausting. I almost lost it right there. But instead I smiled. A slow, calculated smile. "You're right. I've been thinking too much. But you know what helped?" She frowned slightly. "What?" I pulled my phone out and slid it across the counter. Lisa barely glanced at the screen before picking it up. I watched, savoring every second as she read the words that confirmed her entire life was about to implode. Her fingers tensed around the glass. Her lips parted slightly. I saw it, the panic, the pure, unfiltered fear. She knew. Slowly, She set the phone down. I leaned in, my voice almost gentle. Want to explain, Lisa? Silence. For the first time in years, Lisa had nothing to say. And it was beautiful. Finally, she exhaled, rubbing her temple like I was the one being unreasonable. I don't see why this changes anything. I laughed. A real, deep, incredulous laugh. You don't see why this, Jesus Christ, Lisa. Are you even human? She rolled her eyes. I mean, she continued like she was explaining something simple to a child. You raised her. You love her. She's still your daughter. I gripped the counter, my knuckles turning white. She's not my daughter. You made damn sure of that. Lisa clicked her tongue. Taking another sip of wine like this was some minor inconvenience. You're being dramatic. I wanted to throw that glass across the room. I wanted to see her face when it shattered. But instead I just smiled. Because Lisa wasn't in control anymore. I pushed away from the counter, grabbing my phone. You know what? You're right, Lisa. She blinked. What? You're right? I repeated, turning toward the stairs. This doesn't change anything. She stared at me, confused, suspicious. Where are you going? I glanced over my shoulder, letting my smile widen just enough for her to feel uneasy. To take care of a few things. Lisa had spent 24 years lying to me. She had no idea what I was capable of. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked straight to my office, locked the door behind me, and sat down at my desk. Lisa thought she was untouchable. She thought that after everything, after this, I'd just roll over and keep playing the role of the idiot husband, the doting father, the man who sacrificed everything while she smiled and drank her wine. She had no idea who she had been dealing with. I unlocked my computer, fingers moving steadily over the keyboard. Over the years, I had handled every major financial responsibility in our household. The mortgage, the investments, the insurance policies. Lisa didn't even know how much money we had in our accounts, let alone where it was stored. She had never been interested. That was about to change. I pulled up our joint savings and, with a few clicks, transferred every single cent into a separate account under my name. Lisa had never worked a day in her life. Every dollar in this house had come from me. Every luxury she enjoyed, every vacation she had taken, every designer handbag sitting in her closet, all because I had broken my back to provide. Next, I checked the deed to our house. My name. Only my name. I had bought this place before we were married. And for all of Lisa's arrogance, she had never bothered to get herself legally added. My house. I stared at the screen, the pieces of my plan falling into place. I could wipe her out financially before she even knew what hit her. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel it. I opened my email and started drafting a message to our lawyer. Subject: divorce proceedings, urgent message. We need to discuss the process of filing for divorce. There are some financial and legal matters I want handled immediately. Please advise on the next steps. I read it over once, then hit send. One step down. Next, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Emily's name. This was the part that hurt. The part that felt like tearing my own heart out. She wasn't my daughter, but she was. Emily was innocent in all of this. She hadn't asked to be lied to. She hadn't known. And despite everything, I loved her more than anything in this world. But she deserved the truth. I hesitated for only a moment before sending her a message. Hey, sweetheart. Can we talk? It's important. A few seconds later, the typing bubble appeared. Of course, Dad. Everything okay? Dad. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. We need to talk in person. Tomorrow. Just us. Okay, you're scaring me. I just need you to hear this from me first. I love you, Em. Always. I love you, too. See you tomorrow? Yeah. Tomorrow. I set my phone down, my throat tight. Lisa was going to lose everything. Her money. Her security. Her reputation. And most of all, her control. I was going to make sure of it. The next morning, I woke up early. I hadn't really slept, how could I? My mind was too sharp, too wired, too full of the storm that had been brewing ever since Mark's drunken confession turned my entire world inside out. Lisa was still asleep when I left the house. I didn't bother waking her. Let her rest in her false sense of security while she still could. She had no idea the walls were already crumbling around her. Emily and I had agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere away from Lisa's influence. I needed to tell her the truth without her mother interfering, without any manipulation or damage control. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner booth, stirring a cup of coffee with a nervous look on her face. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey, Dad." It was the last time she would ever say that word without knowing the truth. I sat down across from her, hands clasped together, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Hey, sweetheart." She tilted her head, studying me. "You look like hell." I huffed out a laugh. "I feel like it." Emily frowned. "Okay. Seriously, what's going on? You're freaking me out." I took a slow breath. There was no easy way to say this. No way to cushion the impact. "I need to tell you something. And I need you to let me finish before you say anything, okay?" Emily's brows knitted together, but she nodded. "Okay." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, opening the email with the DNA results. I slid it across the table to her, my pulse pounding in my ears. Emily picked it up, her eyes scanning the screen. She read the words once, then again, then a third time. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She stopped. Her breath hitched. She looked up at me, her face pale. "What is this?" I swallowed. "It's a DNA test. I took it a few days ago." Her lips parted, her throat working as she tried to process what she was looking at. You're not I forced myself to nod. "No, I'm not." Emily shook her head violently. No, this has to be wrong. I wish to God it was." "I wish it was too," I admitted. "But it's not. And I need you to know I had no idea. I swear to you, Em, I didn't know." She blinked rapidly, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Mom," she whispered, more to herself than to me. Then her eyes snapped to mine. "Does she know?" My jaw clenched. "She's known since the beginning." Emily recoiled like I had slapped her. "She knew." I nodded. "She's known for 24 years. And she never told me." "She never told you." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, and my heart broke for her. She had just had the happiest day of her life, her wedding. And now, only days later, her entire existence was being rewritten. I reached across the table, covering her trembling hands with mine. "Listen to me. I don't care what a piece of paper says. You are my daughter. I raised you. I love you. That's never going to change." A sob escaped her lips, and she quickly covered her mouth. Her whole body was shaking. She sucked in a ragged breath. "I need to talk to Mom." I nodded. "You do. But not yet." Her tear-filled eyes met mine. "Lisa is going to spin this," I continued. "She's going to try to twist it, make excuses, manipulate you. You know how she is." Emily swallowed hard. She did know. She had grown up with Lisa's mind games just like I had. I squeezed her hands. "You need to let yourself process this first, because the second you confront her, she's going to try to make you feel guilty. She's going to turn this on you, on me, anyone but herself." Emily sat back in her chair, running shaky hands through her hair. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Mark. It's Mark, isn't it?" I nodded grimly. "I think so." Her face twisted in disgust. "I always thought he was a creep. But this?" She pressed her hands against her temples, exhaling sharply. "I can't believe this." I leaned forward. "I know this is a lot, and I know it feels like everything is crashing down. But listen to me, this doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change what you mean to me." Emily wiped her eyes furiously. "It changes everything." I didn't argue, because she was right. Everything had changed, and Lisa was about to find out just how much. I let Emily go after that. She needed space, time to process. I could see it in her face. She was shattered. The foundation of her entire life had just been ripped out from under her, and no matter how much I reassured her, no matter how much I told her I loved her, the truth had left a scar that wouldn't fade easily. She didn't storm off to Lisa right away, though. That told me something. It meant she was thinking. It meant she knew I was right. Lisa would lie, manipulate, twist the situation until Emily didn't even know what was real anymore. But she wasn't going to get the chance. Lisa had spent 24 years spinning lies. I was about to burn them all to the ground. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my pulse was steady. My hands were calm. Everything was in place. I walked into the house and there she was, standing in the living room, waiting for me. Lisa. She was still in her silk robe, one hand on her hip, the other holding a fresh glass of wine, her usual afternoon routine. She arched an eyebrow when she saw me, her expression carefully blank. So? How did your little meeting go? The sheer audacity of her. I smiled. Great, actually. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She had expected me to come back angry, screaming, demanding answers. She wasn't prepared for this. She set the wine down on the table, crossing her arms. What exactly did you tell her? I stepped closer, letting her feel the shift in power. The truth. Lisa let out a sharp laugh. The truth? Oh, please. And what exactly do you think you know, huh? I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen a few times. Everything, Lisa. I know everything. Then I turned the phone toward her. The color drained from her face, because on the screen was an email. Not just any email, an email from my lawyer confirming that the divorce papers were officially filed. Lisa's mask cracked. You? She blinked rapidly, her jaw tightening. You're divorcing me? I nodded. Oh, absolutely. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh, shaking her head. Wow. So this is what we're doing, huh? You're going to throw away 24 years of marriage over a technicality. I raised an eyebrow. A technicality? Lisa rolled her eyes, her confidence returning. Oh, don't act so wounded. You love Emily. You raised her. A DNA test doesn't erase that. You're still her father in every way that matters. I tilted my head. If that's true, then why did you lie? She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. I stepped closer. Why did you let me spend 24 years breaking my back for a child that wasn't mine? Lisa's lips pressed into a thin line. Because it didn't matter, she snapped. You were the best option. You had a good job. You were responsible. Mark, she scoffed. Mark could barely take care of himself, let alone a baby. So I did what I had to do. I stared at her, something ice-cold slithering through my veins. You did what you had to do? Lisa lifted her chin defiantly. Yes. And it worked, didn't it? Emily had a great life. A better life. So what if I bent the truth a little? She got a father who actually cared. And you, she gave me a cruel smile. You got to feel important. Everybody wins. I exhaled slowly. Wow. You really are a piece of work. Lisa shrugged. Oh, grow up. You're acting like some tragic victim. But you loved being the provider. You loved being the hero. Don't act like you didn't get anything out of this. I nodded thoughtfully. You're right. I did. Lisa smirked, thinking she had one. Then I pulled out a second document and dropped it onto the table. Lisa frowned, looking down. And then her entire body went still. Because it wasn't just divorce papers. It was the deed to my house. The one only my name was on. And right next to it, an official eviction notice. Lisa's eyes snapped up to mine, wide with disbelief. What the hell is this? I smiled. Oh, you know. Just a little technicality. Panic flickered in her expression. You can't do this. I leaned in. I can. And I am. Lisa's chest rose and fell rapidly. She stopped, shaking her head. No. No, you're not thinking clearly. You can't just throw me out. Oh, but I can, I said smoothly. See, Lisa, you never bothered to put your name on anything. Not the bank accounts. Not the mortgage. Not the assets. Legally? You have nothing. Her breath hitched. For the first time, she actually looked afraid. I leaned in, lowering my voice. You had 24 years to come clean. 24 years to tell me the truth. But you didn't. And now? Now you get nothing. Lisa swallowed hard. Emily knows, I cut in. And you can bet she'll never look at you the same way again. Lisa's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal searching for an escape. There was none. I grabbed my car keys and headed for the door. You have 1 week to get out. After that, I'll have you forcibly removed. Lisa stumbled forward, reaching out. Wait, I turned back, meeting her eyes one last time. You took 24 years from me, Lisa. My voice was quiet. Dangerous. I'm about to take the rest of your life. Then I walked out, slamming the door behind me. The moment I stepped outside, the weight of it all settled in my chest. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the driveway, but I barely noticed. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally see clearly. Lisa was finished. I had spent 24 years being the fool. The provider. The workhorse she could manipulate and lie to while she smiled and sipped her wine. But not anymore. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, and let out a long breath. I should have felt relief. Satisfaction. Something. But all I felt was exhaustion. Emily. She was the only thing that still mattered. I checked my phone. She hadn't texted since our conversation at the cafe. I didn't blame her. She needed time. She needed to grieve the life she thought she had, the mother she thought she knew. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway, not even glancing back at the house. My house. Lisa's time there was already running out. I drove without a destination, the streetlights flickering on as the sky darkened. My entire life had changed in the span of a few days. A few words. A single test result. I had lost a wife, lost a marriage, lost the illusion of fatherhood. But I hadn't lost Emily. I wouldn't. Before I even realized where I was going, I found myself parked outside her apartment. The lights were on inside. I hesitated for only a moment before stepping out and knocking on the door. A few seconds later, it opened. Emily stood there, her eyes red-rimmed, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked tired, worn out. But when she saw me, she gave a small, broken smile. Hey. I swallowed. Can I come in? She stepped aside, letting me in. The apartment was quiet. No music. No TV. Just silence. I sat down on the couch, rubbing a hand over my face. Emily sat across from me, curling her legs under her. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, she broke the silence. I told Jason. I looked up. Yeah? She nodded, biting her lip. He was shocked. Angry. I think he wanted to go yell at Mom. A humorless laugh. I told him not to bother. She's not worth it. I exhaled slowly. No. She's not. Emily hesitated. I don't know how to feel. I nodded. I know. She looked down, picking at the hem of her sweater. I keep thinking about my childhood. The bedtime stories. The school drop-offs. Every time you helped me with my homework or showed up to my recitals, or her voice cracked. She sucked in a breath, blinking rapidly. That was you. Not Mark. Not anyone else. Just you. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. Always. Emily let out a slow breath. So, does that mean we're okay? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, something in my chest eased. We're more than okay, sweetheart. I reached across the table, gripping her hand. I don't care what the DNA says. You're my daughter. Nothing changes that. A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time she didn't wipe it away. She squeezed my hand. And just like that, I knew we were going to be okay. Lisa had taken 24 years from me. But she couldn't take this. She couldn't take us.